Hello, and welcome to Filter Your soSIMPLE Calendar. I'm Lauren Naslund, co-founder of Paradise Partners, the makers of soSIMPLE software. In a minute, I'll turn the webinar over to Ken D'Oronzio. Ken's the other co-founder of Paradise Partners, and he's the creator and lead developer of soSIMPLE Calendar. But first, a brief orientation. This webinar will cover all the ways that you can filter events in a soSIMPLE calendar. It's geared towards people who are familiar with the basics of how soSIMPLE works. But if you're new to soSIMPLE Calendar, that's no problem. Please stay. We'll be pointing out some resources where you can learn more. Next month's seminar topic will be based on what you tell us you want to learn more about. So if there's something you'd like to see us cover next month, let us know in the chat during the webinar or at the end. And if you have a question during the webinar, please type it into the Q&A area on your screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can after the demo. If you experience video or audio problems, also let us know in the Q&A area. The entire webinar will be an hour long. Thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to introduce Ken D'Oronzio.
Hi guys, good to see you. Welcome.
We can't see you.
You can't see me.
No.
Well, I can't see them either. It's a soSIMPLE calendar, powerful filtering and searching. I hope everyone can see me and hear me. Okay. I'm going to just start off with a brief sort of overview of what we're going to be talking about today so that we're all sort of on the same page. So I prepared a little presentation. I hope you'll bear with me through this. So I'm Ken D'Oronzio. I've been developing with FileMaker for long enough. And I'm the co-founder, as Lauren said, of Paradise Partners and lead developer of soSIMPLE software. And where you'll tend to find me is on the jagged edge of FileMaker technology, what's possible in native FileMaker, sort of right on the edge of what's of what we can learn from other tech and what we can pull in from other tech and use within FileMaker. Things like JavaScript and PHP and Internet of Things. So I know, a lot of people, if you're here, are already familiar with soSIMPLE to some degree and already have a reason for thinking about calendars in their solution. But this is a worthwhile piece to sort of revisit is why are we talking about calendars at all? Why are we even putting calendars in our FileMaker solutions, in our FileMaker custom apps? And the reason is that our customers, our clients are getting used to seeing calendars everywhere. They all have their own personal calendar, whether it's inside Outlook or Google or the Apple Calendar, and just 3 of the most popular ones of hundreds of them. And so the reason they're very popular is because people think visually. They want to see a monthly calendar. Even if you don't have one of these calendars, you probably have one sitting on your wall that you scratch out events and type new ones in and write new ones in. So we think very visually about our time. And when it comes to technology, we want to be able to drag and drop those events around and make it easy. So your customers tend to want this type of technology, and more as they see it on their own personal devices, they expect to see it within their custom app. And so that's the reason why we even started doing soSIMPLE Calendar. It became an expectation of our customers to see a visual drag and drop calendar.
Ken?
Yes.
I'm not seeing your slides.
Well, that's not good. Thank you for telling me. Let's try that again. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, well, I talked about myself ad nauseum, so I'm going to skip that part. We talked about this, so your customers really want it. So where is soSIMPLE's place in this whole world of calendars? We were the first drag and drop calendar available in a web viewer in FileMaker. We created a modern interface for managing your schedule. And we designed this calendar to be not only easy for your customers to use, but we try to make this as simple as possible to be able to get in and start manipulating. And you're going to see a lot of advanced techniques today, but we're going to start off with some very simple ones that show you how it's very easy to start filtering your calendar. You get an idea, easy, deep integration, infinite intuitive customization, and just a million ways to see your calendar. And we're talking specifically, I wanted to highlight this aspect of it. When we talk about the filtering today, we're not just talking about within your custom app, but we're talking about if you publish this to ical, if you publish this to the web, within WebDirect, within Go, within Pro, anywhere that you can get this calendar, you can use the filtering mechanisms that we're talking about today. Why do you want to filter in soSIMPLE? The biggest request I think I get when people first start working with soSIMPLE is, how do I show my calendar? And what they invariably mean is, how do I show my events? And it takes this conceptually away from I'm showing different calendars for different people to I'm filtering my calendar because I have one events table with a whole bunch of events. I'm filtering that list of events to just show my own calendar. And so that's why calendar's in quotes here, because we don't really own our own calendars usually inside soSIMPLE. You'll usually filter a bigger calendar. It's great, filtering calendars is great for sharing calendars with vendors, sharing what the schedule of a production lineup is for your vendors or salespeople or what have you, because you can put all this stuff online and use the same filters. You're working inside your FileMaker app, and you want to just limit your view of this calendar to a specific project. So you're looking at the project layout, and you want to just show the context of that project. So you don't want to show all the events in your calendar. You want to filter it. So these are different ways of using filters. Managing specific resources. You have an administrative person who's managing all the resources. So some people want to see all of them, and then some people just want to see specific resources, or you want to limit your scope while you're trying to manage your resources. So you can filter different different staff people, different rooms, different equipment, and you can filter that down while you're working on it. And finally, for security, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation, that you can limit events based on security mechanisms. I do want to point out that I'm going to be moving very quickly through this demonstration. So I'm assuming some level of understanding of soSIMPLE integration. As Lauren pointed out, if you don't have experience with soSIMPLE, you're not lost. You'll see this really as a feature overview, what's possible as far as filtering goes. But if you have an understanding of soSIMPLE integration, I think it'll help a lot in understanding how we do each step of this integration. I also wanted to point out that server-powered calendars, which is what 90% of our clients use, work differently in how they draw events and how they fetch events than standalone. So server-powered just means it's being hosted on FileMaker server. It's still running within FileMaker Pro. It still runs your client-side scripts, or maybe it's not. Either way, but it doesn't apply. The filter techniques we're using today don't apply to standalone desktop calendars where you just double click your FileMaker app on your desktop. So there are three different types of filters in soSIMPLE. There are data source filters, and those are ones that you set up within soSIMPLE calendar settings in the data source setup area. There are URL filters that you set up inside the web viewer itself. And then there's an advanced find, which incorporates a server-side script to perform the find for your events. And we're going to talk about all three of these. And we'll even add in a bonus of resource filters. And resource filters means just which columns and rows do you want to show in your calendar. So let's talk about each one of these a little bit in depth before I dig into the demo. Data source filters. So this is the edit data source window inside soSIMPLE calendar settings. And there are a couple different ways to filter your event in here. You can either limit them by the privileges of the account name you used in here, or you can assign a show only records flag, and I'll show how both these mechanisms work, that will then limit the events that are shown in your calendar to those show only record flag fields. I'll show you how that works. URL filters, the second type of filter I'll be demonstrating. URL filters filter the calendar based on either a single criteria, which looks something like this, a field name equals a value in that field. Very, very simple. I'm looking in the category field for any events that have the word that are the word meeting, that match the value on the right-hand side. So category field equals the value meeting, single criteria. You can do multiple requests, which is like an OR request. You can do that by saying, I want to show all events where the category is either meeting or seminar, and it looks something like this. And you can combine these two. So I can say category equals meeting or seminar, and the owner has to match this. So these are the multiple URL filters you can use. And finally, the advanced find request. This is a server-side script, and it passes information to that script using a special parameter called find parameter. And that might look, I didn't show an example of that. So find parameter just gets passed in the URL, and I'll show how that works. The bonus resource filter looks like this. It's a special keyword we use in the parameter called filter_resource. And it might look something like this. There it is. And this is saying I want to take these 8 resources. If you see in that background image, there's 7 or 8 resources total. 3 of them are checked off. Those 3 are ID number 15, 3, and 1. So it's the same idea. Filter those that calendar to only show rows 15, 3, and 1, which is sun, Osceola, and orange. So that was the quick overview. Let's dig into a demo and see how that all works. Before I do that, I would like to actually hide my image. I think this is how I do it. Should still see my screen. So let's talk about how this is what our setup looks like. So this is soSIMPLE calendar settings file. Where we were in last month, if you were with us last month, is we created a demo file. The demo file looks like this. It's called FM demo file. And there's a few layouts in here. We had left off last time with just a calendar layout and a single calendar in here, look just like this. And it's defined using this data source called demo, which pulls off events from the soSIMPLE layout, which looks like this. I'm actually going to pull this off because we're not going to use this yet, so I'm going to hide that for a little while. So it looks just like this. And so we've got a few resources. We've got John, Henry, Joe, and Alfredo. And those are represented in resource view as columns. So that's where we're starting. And the URL is just like that. So the first thing I want to do is talk about that first level of privileges. If you didn't notice, I actually had on this layout a display flag field. Yeah, that's what I thought. I want to actually change this because I messed it up during the rehearsal. So let's actually change that back to the number field. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this one called John and Henry with a 1. And you're going to see, if I look at a list view, you're going to see a bunch of events. You're going to see a bunch of events with display flag 1. So that's a special field. We're not using it yet. The way I use it is I go into the data source setup, and I go and I edit the data source called demo. And when I pop in here, you're going to see this space to do this. So there's this, where is that? Show only records flag. And so what we do is we point that at a field, in this case, the display flag, with the expectation that that field is either going to have a 1 or a 0 or a nothing in it, or a true or a false in it. So any values that have a 1 or a true will show in the calendar. Anything else won't. So that's the level we're using. The other method I talked about is that we have an account name and a password in here. I'm not going to demonstrate this part today, but with that, the way that works is that if you have a account that has limited access to your calendar, so a specific user, for example, you can use whatever privileges that account has will determine what events show in your calendar. So that's another way of limiting events. So for now, I'm just going to use the display flag field. And we're going to take a look. And as soon as this clears out, you should actually, without changing anything, even this preview of the calendar is going to limit my events to just the events that have these ones or zeros. We can go back to the calendar and take a look. Whoops. Go back to the calendar and take a look. And we've filtered this calendar now to from showing a lot of events to just showing a few events. And I can easily go in. I'm actually going to open that up in a new window. So I can take one of these, for example, let's take one on the 24th. What month are we in here? We're in January. Yeah, let's take this one on the 26th, right over here, this 9 a.m. event. I'm going to change this one from, I'm going to make it blank. I can make it 0. I'm going to click resume. And now when I refresh this calendar, that one on the 26th disappeared. So that's the simplest. And this is great. We actually, in our soSIMPLE sample file that you download when you download a soSIMPLE, we use this as just using this mechanism. In other words, having this little checkbox where you can say 1 or 0. But typically, most people would go in here instead and say, all right, I'm going to actually make that mean something. I don't want to have to manually check it. So I'm going to make that a calculation. And I'm going to say, whenever, for example, the owner is Lauren, right? I want that to be a 1. And so that now changed all my events to Lauren. And so now what you're seeing are just Lauren's events. And so you can use that display just to, some people will use it, for example, for the a job status. I only want to show things that are active, or I only want to show appointments that have been confirmed. And if that's the purpose of your calendar, you can lock it down without doing anything fancy to the URL. It's the simplest way to filter your calendar. But if I want to filter by owner, I probably would want to be dynamic about that. In other words, I probably want to impact that either by a script that I wrote, or maybe I want to impact it by being able to select it manually. And so what I mean by that is a URL filter. So I'm going to close this list for a moment. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, I'm going to actually back out of this change. I'm going to no longer use this display flag field. Okay, so now all my events will show back up again, and I'm going to filter it using URL filtering. All right, so all the events are back. Okay, so let's say, for example, let's go with that owner field. So let's say I want to just show Lauren's events. So I can go right into my web viewer if I wanted to, and I can say owner equals Lauren. And I can just show Lauren's events in my calendar, and that actually will filter it, right? Hard coding, that's probably not the most useful thing, but there has its places too. Typically, what I probably want to do is instead affect it with some sort of field. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put a global field on the same layout, and I'll even make that a drop-down list of all my owners. And I'm going to make this field, I'm going to make the web viewer instead use the global field that I set up. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to say owner equals owner. Okay, so right now it's showing all the ones without an owner, actually is what it's showing. Because right now it's matching owner is blank. So I'm actually going to change this and say if not is empty. I forgot I'm not inside here. If not is empty. So if I put something in owner is the only time I want to use it. So if the owner field is not empty, then show this. Okay. Okay. But now I'm showing all the events because I haven't changed the owner yet. Now I can change it to Lauren, and I'm showing just Lauren's. I'm showing just Ken's. And I'm showing just Nikki's. So that's a great level of filtering. If that's all you need, we just filter the whole calendar by specific people. So let's go another level. Let's say I want to show Ken and Lauren. Let's say that's a checkbox instead of That's a checkbox instead of a drop down. So if I want to show Ken and Lauren, that didn't work, right? And let's take a look at the URL. Actually, let's show the two methods here. So one is owner equals Ken. Oops, that's not right. Let's try refreshing this. The URL field is not being updated for some reason. There it is. Okay, owner equals Ken. So this is what the URL looks like right now. So as soon as I add Lauren, the URL then looks like Ken. It looks like Ken, owner equals Ken, and then return character and Lauren. And so the reason that's not working is because we need to send, when we send it to soSIMPLE, what actually should be looking like is this. It should be owner equals Ken pipe Lauren. That's actually what we want it to look like. But we're sending a list in this interface owner field. So what I'm going to do to fix that is take that list and just turn it into a piped list. So I'm going to go in here and say, if not is empty ZG owner, then make owner substitute interface owner. Anytime I find a return mark, put a pipe. Now I'm going to have exactly what I was looking for, a pipe value list of Ken and Lauren. So now I'm showing Ken and Lauren's events. Those are Ken's, those are all, there's Lauren, and there's Ken and Lauren. So we just went to level 2 of URL filtering. So let's say we now want to combine filters. So I'm going to go a little crazy here. I'm going to take the resource field. So this is now another global field called ZG resource. I'm going to do something similar that I did with owners. I'm going to assign a checkbox of resources this time. And I'm going to alter the URL, do the exact same thing that I did with owner. Only this time it's going to say if the resource global field is used, then match. And this name, this what I'm typing in here on the left is a field name, just to be really clear. This is a field name in the soSIMPLE table on the soSIMPLE layout from the data source. So it's owner equals the list of owners, resource equals a list of resources. Again, a pipe value of resources. Welcome to Nyack. I think, what did I miss? Oh, I know what I missed. No? Oh. Okay, so now what we've got, right, I'm filtering by this. Let me not filter these for a sec so you can see them all. I can now filter by all of John's events. And now I can say I want all John's events that also belong to Ken, and there's only one of them, right? But I'm combining these two filters, and just to be clear about what you're actually seeing, there's John or Henry, Ken or Lauren. As long as it matches one of these and one of these, it'll show up. And what the URL we're seeing for that is owner equals Ken or Lauren, and resource is John or Henry. And it's URL encoded, so you're seeing, instead of the pipe, you're seeing %7C, just because URL encoding is on the URL view, is on the viewer. So that is second level of filtering. And I'm going to immediately point out, and so what that level of filtering is, you combine two different fields, owner and resource, and you did an OR on both of them, and combine them to make these two, either this or this, and this or this. So it's already pretty sophisticated filtering. There is one thing I want to point out in here, and I'm going to actually just do this with resource. And that is on the 29th, we have 4 events. The 4 events are John and Henry. This is assigned to both John and to Henry. And we have John only. This is only assigned to John and Henry only. And so if I say I want to show all John's events, it's going to filter out John only. And if I want to show Henry's events, it'll show you John only and Henry only. What we're missing from this is the one that we assigned to John and Henry. So I want to show why it's doing that and what the workaround for this is. So why it's doing that is this list resource is a return separated list, right? It's John and then a return character and Henry. That's how it appears within FileMaker. When soSIMPLE goes to fetch its events, it sent it this URL that said, I'm looking for exact matches for John. Well, it didn't have an exact match because this resource field has a return character in it with 2 values. So if I were to do Command F and did equal John, it wouldn't match. So here's how the workaround goes for this. I'm going to go into my soSIMPLE layout. This is the one that I use for the data source. And I'm just going to pull on a field that I created. And I wanted to show you, let me see if I can find, I might be able to do it this way. There you go. Here's the one that has both of them, John and Henry. But what I created this time is a repeating field that shows everything that's in my resources. And the reason I did that is because now a search on equal John will show not only John, but also ones with multiple values in it. And that's a value of the repetition feature. With most people don't use reps for anything anymore. This is a great use of reps, is that you can search on them individually. So that field, it's a pretty simple calculation. It basically takes the resource field and does a get value on it for each active repetition. And so that's what that calculation does. And it turns out as I add these values, it basically just adds them to the reps. And so the change I would have to make in my calendar to use that field is instead of searching on resource, instead of filtering based on resource, I'll filter on ZC resource reps. Was it rep or reps? I guess we're about to find out. And there you go. And so now when I filter by John and Henry, I'm also showing the ones that are both. Okay. One more thing about resources. The other thing you might be noticing is that we're seeing more columns than just John and Henry. So all the filtering we've been doing so far is talking about filtering the data to show specific events. It has nothing to do with filtering the columns. And so the columns are just a display function. I'm not going to show anything in Joe's column because I filtered out anything that's Joe's. So I'm going to hide Joe and Alfredo's columns. So this uses another special parameter for soSIMPLE. And what that does is, let me go to resource. So if not is empty, ZG resource, I'm already filtering my reps, or I'm already filtering my resources by that rep field. I'm also going to do another one that is filter resource, and that's a special keyword in soSIMPLE, with the same exact list of pipe separated values of my resource. So now this list is also changing what columns show up. So there we are. Those are all URL filtering. So you can see you can get really, really powerful just with the URL without jumping into any advanced find. And I really encourage anytime you're setting up any soSIMPLE calendars, go as far as you can with this mechanism because it really is, it can accomplish, I would say, 90 to 95% of what people are trying to filter on soSIMPLE. There are a few outlying cases where people want to really filter by advanced search, and we handle that. But I wanted to really point out that you can get pretty far with just this. So where's a good use case for URL filtering? Let's talk about that. Oops, sorry, or this is not URL filtering, for keyword filtering, for, excuse me, what's the word? For advanced find. So a really good use case for advanced find is keywords. I'm looking for everything that has the word description in it. If I can type. I type in description and I press return, and it filters my entire calendar to only show the events that have the word description in it. Okay, how does this work? So what happens is soSIMPLE typically is going off to the server and grabbing a bunch of events based on the criteria that's in the URL, including the date range, including a filter from the URL, and then it returns those events and displays them on your calendar. So a lot's going on under the hood. The advanced find script is a script that we set up in the data source. So I'm going to go here and I'll show it to you. We set it up in the data source. We have a new data source here called advanced find keyword. And that script, which is defined right here, optional find script server mode, is advanced find server-side keyword. That script, ignore that one. That script is going to run after the events are found, about to be displayed on the calendar. And we run this server-side keyword script, and it filters the events, one more mechanism before we display it on your calendar. So it's the last step before we send the events back. And it runs on the server side, which means it's really difficult to debug. You have to do some work to debug this. So that combined with, if I go into the layout mode, I added a find parameter of interface keyword. And so what I'm doing is I'm sending this keyword field as this is a special, again, another special parameter from soSIMPLE. Find parameter sends this as a parameter, as a script parameter to the advanced find script in soSIMPLE. So let me show you that happening. So what I'm going to show you is actually a log. I'm going to delete all the records in my log. This is really only for the purpose of this demo. It's great for troubleshooting. I'm going to put that off to the side, and you're going to get to see what's actually happening on the server. So I'm going to just take that value out. I'm going to show January again, and you're going to see a couple things pop up here. The second one is this month. So it's showing you, it's doing a search, found 19 records. It's doing a search. The first line is blank. That's relevant, and I'll show you why. And the date range is from December 30th to February 3rd, which is the date range required to draw January because it goes a little bit into February. And it found 19 records and it's showing them. When I put the word description in here, the first line turns into description. And so what we have is a script which has a lot of documentation on it, tells you how it works. The first thing it does is run this debug advanced find with the script parameter. So all that does is it jumps over to this log. Again, this is all happening server side. It jumps over to the log and puts the script parameter into a record so you can see what it started with. Then it grabs that script parameter, and the script parameter is more than what you sent it in the URL. The script parameter is a whole bunch of other values, including the from and to that I just showed you and some other information. So we now have an opportunity to intercept the find criteria that happened on the server. So it found those 19 events, and then I went ahead and I filtered it by description by going down to here, and I said, if the criteria, oh, let me show you where that's set. So criteria, I grabbed the get value 1, which is just the first line of the script of the whole parameter that came in. And then I use criteria down below to say if criteria is not empty, then go into find mode and constrain my found set based on the event description matching the criteria. So all it did is it took that description, put it into the description field, took that first line, put it into the description field, and say, show me all the records, constraining the found set. And that's important because I've already found the 19 records, so I'm going to constrain them by the word description. The alternative would have been to actually use this first and last date and perform a find natively. In other words, don't constrain, perform the full find. And we do that up above because there's also there's cases. There's a few things you have to know about this script, and one of those things is that when you redraw a single event on your calendar, when you go through edit an event and save it, it redraws a single event, and a query ID is sent through the as one of these lines. So when you want to just redraw that one event, your script has to account for that. And so we're performing a find in this example just for that one event. But as far as this demo is concerned, the criteria is what's important. We do a find mode, we constrain it, and that's how we're showing just the description on here. So what's cool about that also is you can combine it with URL filtering. So you can actually have done a URL filter that limits me to certain owners or whatever you want, and then further refine it using a keyword or using something else. So I have a couple other demos of usefulness of the advanced find script. So I combined, just for the sake of the demo, I combined two different criterias. I took the description, I took the keyword again, and I found only those that are assigned to John, Henry, and Alfredo. So I wanted to show just how that worked. It's basically the same. I have a different calendar again, right? This is the keyword and resources. I'm running a different script. And you're also going to see that when it comes through as a request, it comes through kind of funny. But that's on purpose. So what I wanted to show you was we can take these multiple, you're not, just because it's one line doesn't mean you're limited to one value. But it's up to you to how you want to separate it. So you can go in here, you can say, okay, so I'm going to take the keyword, I'm going to follow it by a caret command. That's above the 6. And then I'm going to send after that a pipe separated list of resources. And I send that. The reason I do it that way is now I have a single line that has the keyword followed by a list of resources with some predictable separators. And so on the server side, I end up with description, caret, John, Henry, Alfredo separated by pipe characters. And then in this script, I do this. I just break that apart. It's the same script. Grab the criteria. Then I go down and I say, okay, after I've taken my edge cases out of here, I can go to criteria list by taking that caret mark above the 6 and turning it into a return character. And now I can have a list of values that I send as criteria. I can use the first one, get value, as my quick find. And I can take the rest of them. I can take the next line and I can separate it again by the pipe character. And now I have a resource list. And then I do my find. I say if this is empty, if both of those have something in it, then run the quick find and then restore, and then loop through the resources that came in and constrain my found set by those. So I know there's lots to digest here, and I'm flipping around, sorry. I know there's lots to digest here, but this is just showing you sort of how far you can extend and how far you can push this advanced find script. And we have some solutions that send a lot in that one line. That we can filter by different statuses. We can filter by what privileges you have available to you, whether you're actually allowed to see certain events. And that actually brings me to the third mechanism, the third technique, and that's the secure function. So this leverages one aspect of that advanced find script. So that one aspect is that you have the capability with the advanced find script to constrain an existing found set. In other words, I found January, and now I'm going to constrain January to just those that match my criteria. But there's no reason why you can't also say, you know what, let's perform this find from scratch. Let's actually show events that weren't intended to be on the calendar in the first place. So I show January, it's got no events. I'm going to change that whole thing. I'll show you how that works. So the way that works is I set up another field. Let me go back into here. I set up another field in my soSIMPLE event. I'm going to pull that on now. And it's just called ZC0. Whoops. Just called ZC0. and it's just 0. Every record is just 0, right? You go in here, you look at the calculations, EC0 is just 0. Then I go into my new definition that I created, advanced, find, secure, and I assign that to show only records. So what this effectively does is says, don't show any events on my calendar. I want to map it. I want to show where everything goes, but I don't want to show any events yet. So this view is saying, don't show any events. And when you're about to return the events, run the advanced find server-side security script. And that's why when I look at this, calendar, there are no events on the calendar. So there are no events on this calendar. So there's a lot of different levels of security. What I'm showing you is really for demonstration purposes. I don't really necessarily recommend this method, but this particular. Well, let me walk through it. So what we have is a field on here, and I'll even put it on here so you know what it is. We have a field called secure token, and this is not a global field this time. This is a field that is stored in my single record on the interface table, and it's blank to start with. The reason it's important that it's a stored field is because when we fetch events from the server doesn't know about any globals that we put on the client side, because global fields are stored in just a session, right? So we need that value to be available for both the server side find and for the client, because we need to share some piece of information. What I would frequently do is say, to make this really secure, is I might say, in this example, it's just doing it on the fly, and that's helpful. But what I might actually do is take that secure token and put it inside a staff record and only match it if that staff record matches, as well as the secure token. So I might send a couple different parameters. But in this example, what I'm going to do is basically, let me go into debugger, you can see what the steps are. I'm going to go and set, this is a client-side script. I'm going to set token to UUID, just a random number. I'm going to set this field to that token. So that's got a random number. Then I'm going to go to the web viewer, and I'm going to set the web viewer to the find parameter to include that token. And what that did is it ensured that the server side is aware of this token, so that now if I get rid of this token, for example, those events are going to disappear, and then refresh this. Those events are going to disappear again. And I will point out the find parameter still includes the old token that was there. But because it doesn't match anything, it won't show an event. So let me go through that again. So I'm going to set that secure token. It shows all the events. And what the server-side script is doing is it's saying, grab that first parameter, which again is going to be just that token. In a more robust security setting, it probably would be that token and a username. And then you would go to that staff record and make sure that that token and that username match. But in this case, we're just going to the token interface, and we're saying, does the token that's stored on that preference page, does it match the criteria that we sent through the URL? And if it matches, then go ahead and do what you normally do. Only this time, instead of doing constrain, because there are 0 records and nothing to constrain, perform a find using the date range or whatever other filtering I want to do at that point. Now I can do other filtering in here too if I want. So there's a lot of conceptual stuff in that last demonstration, but I thought it was important to understand that you really could use the secure token for locking down information to people who are supposed to see it. You could also conceivably store tokens in the events themselves, or tie them to tie each record to a staff record that then has a token, and that way you can also limit people's access. So those are a couple ways to really handle the secure aspect of that. And the other thing I wanted to say is you can combine all these techniques, right? So I can go in here and I can do, I don't think I did this here, but you can say, I want to filter one level, then do an advanced find on top of that, do a URL filter first, then filter it further with a advanced find filter. And I can include security as part of that. So you can add these on top of one another. The other thing I wanted to say is that you can take this calendar once you've built it and take the exact the exact URL. I can take this URL and I can put it online. And that calendar is now available to everybody with the filtering that I imposed, whether it's secure filtering or what have you. This is now available online to your clients, to your vendors, or what have you. And if you change that over to a server-side async script, it'll work in a way that allows you to drag and drop events using the web browser or publish it to an ical calendar. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor a little bit to you. Let's see, here we go. Designed to be easy for you to integrate, easy for your clients to use, easy to filter, crazy powerful options for filtering, and use anywhere on any device and any platform. So I wanted to thank you guys for being here. Really, it means a lot. I really appreciate the support, and I hope you got as much out of this tutorial as I intended, because we really tried to put all the stuff for filtering into one place with this tutorial, and I hope that helped. I imagine there are probably a lot of questions, but I wanted to stop there and see if anybody has any questions for me.
Okay, thanks, Ken. And before we get to the questions, I'm going to put a poll up. We're trying to figure out what our next webinar should cover, and we'd like to get feedback from you, our viewers, as to what you'd like to see. If you don't see an option that on the poll that you'd like covered, please send us something in the chat or a Q&A. So Ken, we have someone suggested using, instead of hard coding the field name in a URL filter, can you use a function or calculation to put the field name into that URL?
So just to be clear about what we're talking about, so we're at the calendar and we're looking at a URL filter, and you're saying
look at the simple one, yeah.
Right. So we have this owner and we have this resource. Is there a way to calculate that?
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I'm trying to think if there's another way of.
I guess so that you don't have to go back to change a field name.
Yeah, right. So the downside to doing it this way, I guess, is what I'm hearing is that, right, you can't, is that if you change that field name, this filter breaks. So it's not quite as resilient as calculating it. I would say that given that that's the reason for doing that, I would say it's, bottom line is I think you have to jump through a lot of hoops to not do it this way, to do it based on a calculation. Offhand, I can't think of a way to do it easily. Unless you've set up some sort of a table in your solution that maps the soSIMPLE fields or layout fields to the web viewer. So I would say the short answer is probably this is still the easiest way to do it.
One of the custom functions that returns the field name of a field, perhaps.
Right. Right.
Also, just to expand on that. What are the limitations on the actual field names in terms of spaces, special characters, case sensitive?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's published on our website somewhere, and I frankly don't remember offhand. But for URL filtering, in general, I would say stay away from spaces and periods. I think most other characters most ASCII characters are legal besides those, but stay away from periods and spaces because those can mess up. That's part of this PHP backend that's running, and FileMaker's API to the PHP. Those two things can, specifically in the left-hand side, it can break the soSIMPLE filtering. So.
Okay, someone wanted a little more about the last bit you did with the server-side async script.
Yeah. So, so let me just talk about that. So in case you're not familiar with this. So client-side scripting versus server-side async. The client-side scripting means that when you're inside FileMaker and you drag an event, that I'm just going to throw up debugger here for a quick second. When you drag an event, a script runs inside FileMaker and FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Go. This is what client-side scripting means. I'm in a different calendar, which is why it's doing it here. So that's what client-side scripting means, is run a script inside your FileMaker Pro client. So that obviously wouldn't work on the web because there's no FileMaker script to be run on the web. So if I publish this on the web, we need another mechanism to write events when you drag and drop. I'm actually going to do this with a different calendar because the secure one won't show events. So I'm going to go just to the plain old demo. I'm going to change this over to server-side async. I'm going to use it on my web page. And so what happens with server-side async is that when you drag an event, it gets written on the server. That quick little flash you saw was it writing back to the server, but it did it using a different technology. It doesn't use a script to do it. Instead, it runs server-side, and that's why we call it server-side async. Does that answer your question?
I think that would be good.
Any more questions?
Oh. Someone saying, sees that there's the possibility that when you edit it, when you say drop an event or drag an event, you can actually run a script to change the text on the event. And that would be, I would think, the action script.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, and right, exactly. So you can, so when you, although I guess, depending how you want to do it, I've never seen anybody do it with the server-side script, but in theory, you could also change information and events in the server-side script too. I'm not sure of a use case for that, but I have seen the case where, for example, if I drag this from here to here, I might want to change something about it, saying, "Hey, alert! This is past due" or something, you know, and so you can actually change information because all that's running is a server-side, client-side script that you can do anything you want with. So when you go to that event, and that's covered a lot in last month's presentation, which is available on our website.
Yes, and someone asked, just to reiterate, we will be putting this webinar on our website for you to view again.
Yes, this will be published also.
Okay, any more questions? I'm not seeing any more questions.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, I will wrap up early. And feel free, if you'd like, to email me or post up to our forum, which is at sosimple.com/forums. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to cancel out of my share screen here. Yeah. Right. So that, I guess that's really all I really wanted to say. And if there are any questions, you can get them to our forum or directly to me. And if you boy, there's something else that's not tipping my tongue, and I hate to end a session with just blabbering like that. So all I'm going to say is thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. We will be publishing this, so if you want to use this this video as a resource for any of your filtering requirements, by all means, that will be published. And thank you again. So I will see you next month if you have if we end up putting a session together that interests you then. All right, great to see you. Bye-bye.